Welcome to Nothing But Bet. I'm your host, Maria Marino. In a minute, I'll be joined by our NBA crew, Matt Moore, Sean Little, Jim Turvey, and Joe Dellera as we get you ready for Game 3 of the NBA Finals. Also, throughout the show, we're going to be building a same-game parlay, so let's get right into it. And here's what the market is doing ahead of Game 3. We have 70% of money coming in on Boston, plus 2.5. While 78% of money is on the over of 212.5. As we enter the betting lab with Matt Moore and Sean Little. First things first, Celtics have announced Kristaps Porzingis suffered a left leg injury in Sunday night's game. We kind of already knew that, but what we didn't know is it's a very complicated sounding, rare injury. Bottom line is he is day to day. Matt, how would his absence impact Game 3?
Well, first off, props Maria for not trying to go ahead and pronounce that injury because I was on the court at finals media availability when that came out, and the number of times that you could hear people going, "What is that?" across the court was pretty funny and alarming also. So look, it's obviously a huge deal. The Celtics are plus 26 in this series in net rating when Kristaps is on the court. They're a net 0 without him, so that's a huge differential. But it is kind of important to note they haven't lost the minutes without Porzingis. They're not like getting drubbed in without him and then winning his minutes with him. They've been even without him and then played obviously very well in his minutes. He's probably worth about 2 points to the spread. I think overall it's a good value for him. And I don't think that this opening line that we got at -1 for the Dallas Mavericks was considering that he'd be out, because at that time, Joe Mazzulla had said, hey, he's fine, no concerns. And Porzingis was like, I'm going to be all right. I'm going to do everything I can to play, which is again what he said on Tuesday. I think the value here depends on whether you think he's vital or not. If you're like, no, man, like they are not the same team without Kristaps. They cannot beat this Dallas Mavericks team without Kristaps. And this is a great opportunity for you to buy low on the Mavericks, not only in Game 3, but going forward on series prices. If on the other hand, you're like, well, no, look, he matters, but Boston is still better and they have a great record without Porzingis in these playoffs, probably you want to look the other way, because there's definitely been a market reaction to the Porzingis move if he's ruled out. I'm expecting more of a move in that direction. So there's going to be better opportunities to bet Boston if he's out, if you do believe that he's not vital to the Celtics' chances of taking Game 3.
Sean, how vital do you think KP is?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if vital is the right word. He's important. He's very important. I think it's also interesting that they just had a playoff run without him. He played 2 games. He played well. He's going to be out. They're pretty used to playing without him. This is not like something they're not accustomed to doing. It's not like Drew Holiday's going out or Jason Tatum, for instance, is going out where they haven't had an opportunity to play without him. They're 30-5 without him, 9-1 in the playoffs without Kristaps Porzingis on the floor. The one thing that will hurt is that they are giving up nothing at the rim or from corner threes like we've been harping on, right? Kristaps has been one of the main figureheads that's been the fact that he has been getting blocks, but he's been contesting. Like, even just contesting is a big thing. With that being off the floor for at least maybe this game and going forward in the rest of the series, it could be pretty important when we're talking about protecting the rim and playing D. But offensively, we've been talking a lot about, and we'll continue to talk a lot about, Jason Tatum driving to the basket and creating for others. If there's one guy on the floor that needs really no help getting a shot, especially if he gets the ball in the elbow, that's Kristaps Porzingis. So it'll be interesting to see how they show up, especially on the road without him. But they're accustomed to playing without him, so we'll see how it shakes.
Yeah, just a little bit more on that. Jaylen Brown he did his media availability after the news was announced, and Brown was kind of asked about this. Is there a big adjustment to it, or is this business as usual? And he said it's business as usual. He's like, we have a team built this way, that we're built to be able to play if a guy's out. We have the pieces necessary to step up, and it doesn't change how we're going to approach this game, how we're going to play. He's obviously been great for us, but we're prepared to play without him. And look, that's media speak, but it sounded convincing out of Jaylen Brown's mouth in media.
Last thing, Maria, really quick. Matt and I, before the series, were talking about how thin Boston's bench has been, right? Kristaps coming back kind of covered that up a little bit, put a little veil over that. If he's gone, we're going to see a lot more of that bench, and that could be potentially an issue for Boston.
Couple things. First off, so nice to have our senior writer with boots on the ground in Dallas. I thought, Sean, you made some good points, not not only offensively, because we saw that impact pretty clearly, but the 5 blocks across the first 2 games, and then also just his length gives a lot of players fits. So I do think they're going to miss him in that regard. But all that out of the way, let's talk about just how we expect this game to go. Matt, what's your pick?
All right, I'm going to go Boston on the money line. You can get this at now plus 122 after the move. The opening price was wrong. This is still wrong. This is the thing is I think it's totally fine if you think the Mavericks are going to win this game. I think that's totally fine. What I can't get to is I just can't get to where this price is. So I've been harping on this. In the March game, when Boston went to Dallas and blew them out, mind you, the Celtics were minus 2.5 in that game. And then we open at Mavs minus 1.5. So based off of the rest of the season and this playoff run that the Mavericks had, when they're in the NBA Finals, Boston is still in the NBA Finals, has gotten here and is up 2-0. This is a 4-point line move from March. What possible sense does that make? The answer is none. So for me, the price is wrong on this. That's why the value has to be on Boston, even after the Kristaps injury. Now, again, I think this moves another 2 points if Kristaps is ruled out tomorrow before Game 3. So if you want to wait to put this parlay in, I think that's totally fine because you might be able to get a better price on it. But I will say that if you're taking Boston, I think it's good now. I think it's good after the move. I think you can take the points if this moves to 4. I think that's also a pretty solid move. Dallas is stuck in their comfort zone. They can't play any different. This is a matchup problem. If they were better than Boston, if they had better talent overall, 1 through 7, then this would be fine because the matchups, especially with Kristaps out, might be able to limit it. We don't know if Kristaps is going to play. He might play well. He might be rough. But what we do know is that Boston doesn't have a tactical advantage in this series, and that's not changing. Kristaps doesn't determine that. So with them being unable to play a different way, with the fact that the Celtics, so many things went wrong for them in Game 2, and they still won. There's so many ifs that Dallas needs, even with Kristaps out. Well, Kristaps is out, and Luka has 35, and Kyrie plays better, and the Celtics don't hit threes, and Dallas hits some threes. Then they can get this into a game in the 4th quarter. Okay? I'll take the value on the other side because I think the number is wrong, and that's why I'm going to play Boston here. It's not about the matchup or the game or Kristaps. To me, it's about this number is flatly wrong. I disagree with the market, so I'm on Boston.
Okay. Quick follow-up to Sean. Even if you're not officially picking a side, is Matt selling you?
Yeah, I'd be shocked if it got to 4, honestly. If it gets to a full 4 points, I'd blindly bet Boston no matter what and take the points. I don't think it'll get that high, regardless if Kristaps gets ruled out fully and doesn't play. I think that would be a huge overreaction if it got to 4 full points. But I do agree with Matt, even though I don't love Matt referring to a regular season game in March about the line movement, just because I think there's a lot of just different nuances that are completely different with it being the finals and them being down 2-0. I think being down 2-0 and then going back home puts a little extra juice on it versus a regular season game. But yeah, I mean, I'm on Boston for the series. This is going to be, they need a lot to go right, and they need a lot in their game to change for Dallas to be in a good spot to win this game.
Bad.
I'm not disagreeing.
Matt, no, your facial expressions already say your rebuttal. You already made your case. We're moving on. I want to know how Sean is attacking this game from a betting perspective. I know you got a couple picks, Sean, but give us one of them for now.
Yeah, I'm going to go for a little category leader, game leader, Luka, threes made leader, plus 175. Now, this is purely on the fact, a lot about what Matt said about they're in their comfort zone. They don't know how to play anywhere else. So anyway else. So if they can't get to the rim and get lobs, they can't shoot corner threes. It's going to be a lot of 1v1 with Luka, and he always gets the volume up. He's the only guy with a 3-point prop at 3.5, and it's juiced to over minus 170. He's shooting 11 threes in the conference finals and in the finals. Last 5 games, he's been the leader with 4. He's been the leader 4 times and once tied. Dead heat rules apply here as well. So if he hits 3 and Tatum hits 3, you'll be able to still get some money back and a little bit of profit on top of it. The last guy to beat him was Naz Reid when he went 7 of 9 from 3. It's going to be tough to beat a guy hitting 7 threes. Luka consistently has hit 4+ threes. Over his last 30 games, he's hit 4+ threes in 20. And in the last 10 here in the playoffs, 4+ and 8, 5+ in 4. So the volume's going to be there for Luka. He's going to take a bunch of them. And if he gets out early and can knock down a couple in the first quarter, I really like this spot. Just overall, too, with how balanced the shooting from Boston is going to be.
Yep, 4 threes in each of the first 2 games for Luka. Look, he is not shy about shooting it, that's for sure. And to his credit, I think, harped on him a little bit earlier in the postseason, and I know he's been banged up throughout, but he was struggling a lot from 3 earlier, but he has seemed to dial it in as of late. Matt, what else do you like for this game?
Yeah, I'll go over 212.5. It's a public play, but I don't really mind here. The opponent team total overs are 5 and 3 in Dallas in the playoffs. A little bit more of an edge. They actually have played a little bit better offensively. Opponents have in Dallas than they have on the road. Dallas's defense has traveled well. I talked to Dante Exum today at media availability about pace, and his comments were pretty interesting. He's like, we can play both. We're good at both because of what Luka's able to do. He was like, but at the same time, we really need to get them into cross matches with their switching style. We don't need to be going into their set defense. So we've got to pick up the pace a little bit in terms of getting up into our sets a little bit more. And I kind of talked to him about the difference between playing fast break points, which the Mavericks have been okay at in the series, not great, and then playing with more tempo. And I think that's maybe kind of a key here, is that they'll get into their sets a little bit quicker, and maybe that's going to result in, I think, a little bit faster shots. There's also just like the basic shooting variance tilt. It's possible that we keep seeing these clunkers throughout this series, but to me, it feels like eventually we're going to get a game where one team or the other is red hot from 3. You know, game 1, Boston hit a lot of threes, but it was on 38%. In a single game environment, that's not a hugely outlier performance. That's more of the league average across games. So we kind of look at this from the perspective of either Dallas or Boston's likely to hit at a high percentage on their threes with a faster pace. I think there's real value here on the over. I missed in game 1 and went back to the under on game 2, but the pace ticked up a little bit in game 2. As I'm trying to get a feel for the series and where the pace is at, I do lean a little bit more towards a faster pace with a little bit better shooting. Kristaps being out, I think, helps the Mavs offense a little bit. So I'll go ahead and I'll go with the over 212.5.
I think as long as Dallas even shows up a fraction of the way that they did shooting the basketball in the first 2 games, it's going to help, because then also the Celtics have to keep up with them, and then it's going to be more competitive and, you know, hopefully lead to more points overall. But it's that time. We're going to start building the notorious SGP. And Sean, you're going to give us our first leg. The honors belong to you. So what is leg number 1 for our same game parlay?
Yeah, this may have moved a little bit with the Kristaps news, but Mavs first quarter -0.5, -118. I would play it to -1 if you want to lay the juice and play the money line. I like the Mavs to come out rolling early, and the biggest reason is a fresh Luka Doncic. Now, Dave McMenamin came out, McMahon came out and said that Luka going into game 2 got the shot in that abdomen to kind of deal with the pain. That makes me like the first quarter even more, to know that that'll be fresh. He won't be feeling that. And I got some numbers overall to back this up. I think overall the usage that Luka has to deal with just wears him down throughout the game, and he's not as productive once we get towards the fourth quarter. In the first quarter in this series, he has 20 points, and he scored 20 points in 18.5 minutes on 57% from the floor. In the fourth quarter, he has 6 points in 17.5 minutes on 20% from the floor. I think he just flat out gets tired. Same thing happened in the second round dealing with Lou Dort. The more physical they are, guys like Jaylen Brown, Tatum, all 1v1 on Luka, he just gets beat up a little bit. In the first half against Lou Dort and the Thunder, 88 points on 45% shooting from 3. In the second half, he had 60 points on 29%. To compare, SGA scored 96 points compared to Luka's 60 in the second half in the Western Conference second round. So I think Luka is fresh. He usually gets going. He had 13 points in that first quarter in game 2. They won that first quarter. Maybe even J Kidd makes some adjustments and plays the starters a few more minutes. Maxi Kleber maybe gets a few less minutes. I think overall the game flow, everything leans Dallas to get off to a good start. So I'm backing the Mavs, especially a fresh Luka.
Yeah, and not just Luka being fresh, but also just coming off a loss again. The other day, Matt Moore really liked Luka's over on points just because of the way he tends to perform after a loss. But I mean, that cap, the first quarter versus fourth quarter scoring, there you go. And he's like such a massive part of the Mavs offense, clearly. All right, Matt Moore, we're going to let you go. Enjoy Dallas. Thanks so much for all the insight. Sean's going to stick around for the rest of the show, but thanks, Matt.
Thanks, y'all.
Okay. Let's do it in 3, 2, 1. Let's take a look at prop leaders heading into game 3. The highest points prop on the board belongs to Luka Doncic at 32.5. He had 32 exactly in game 2. Highest rebounding prop goes to Jason Tatum at 9.5. Tatum had 9 boards in game 2. And then once again, we got Luka in the highest assist prop at 9.5. After having only 1 assist in game 1, he had 11 in game 2. We got Jim Turvey in the house now. Okay, so from what I'm hearing, you are Dallas curious at this point in the series. Tell me what that means.
Yeah, for sure. So I was part of the Boston conglomerate before the series started. I was having the green beer. I was all about Celtics, but a lot of that was that game 1 spot that we kind of talked about. And now I'll say this: the Dallas curiosity, it's not dragging me into futures territory just yet. I don't really want to be on a Dallas. You can get a pretty long number on it, but I think the value is more game to game at this point. And the reason I'm curious is a couple of reasons. One of them, you talked about top of show, Kristaps Porzingis injury is a very big deal. He's been playing, his impact has been about as big as any Celtic we've seen in this series. In game 2, the Mavericks were actually +5 when Porzingis was on the bench. And for this series as a whole, it's been a net even series with Porzingis on the bench. Now we're talking small sample. You don't really want to use plus minus in these 1-2 game sample sizes. But it matches kind of what the eye test has shown, that he really has been a key part, especially the Celtics offense. He's really been able to kind of, get those smaller guys on him and just rise up and fire away. He's really gotten off to good, fast starts in these games as well. That's been key for kind of pushing Boston towards early leads. Second half, he's fallen off a little bit, and second halves have typically been the better part of these games for Dallas. So, we also get Dallas going back home, right? Some of these shooters that have looked a little bit sketchy. We'll cover that in kind of the pick section. These guys are now suddenly going to be a little bit more confident at home. You're going to be hitting a few more of these shots, but just getting those shots up. The Dallas really has been at a deficit all series in terms of the number of 3-pointers being made, or even attempted. Sorry. These attempts are important to spacing the offense, getting those, setting up the lobs. Matt, you said a great article out today, kind of talking through some of the stuff that Dallas figured out in the fourth quarter there, really starting to get those lobs that are so central to their offense back into rhythm as they kind of switched up, who some of these screens, who is guarding who, unlocking a few things. So a lot of factors here, but I'm intrigued by Dallas. I'm Dallas curious, whatever you want to call it. I'm definitely, I'm interested. I'm not writing this off just yet as a sweep for sure for Boston.
I can understand that, because I don't know if it's possible for Dallas, Sean, to play any worse than they did in games 1 and 2. Are you starting to get there, like where Jim is, where you're wondering, like, can Dallas really make this a series?
Well, I think you always make your pick pre-series, right? You lay whatever number you did, if it's the money line or if it was the series spread over 5.5 games, whatever you took, and then you always dissect game to game. A lot of things change in the 7-game series that can completely flip a lot of different series, right? Porzingis going out is a big deal for game 3. So I think also a big thing can be learned on Porzingis going out. Now, I saw the same injury as everyone else, and I immediately thought he wasn't going to play game 3. And if he did play game 3, he wasn't going to be as impactful. The number opens Mavs -1. If you were already leaning Mavs, I think it's worth the risk right then, knowing we're still going to be waiting on Kristaps Porzingis news to come out, that if he plays, he's probably going to be a little hobbled. He's not going to be 100%. Lay the 1 right then. Don't wait for the news that he's out and then have it move a point and a half on you if you were already leaning that way anyway. I think that there's a lot of value left on the table with people waiting for finalized news, especially on injuries that we saw just like everyone else. So that's just a lesson on the Porzingis thing. But don't ever get stubborn and double down on maybe a pre-series bet that you made and start taking it game by game. You could find different angles, different value in different spots, and you can cash them all. You could still potentially find some money on Dallas and your series ticket on the Celtics in 6 or less. If you laid -1.5 like myself, can still cash too. So always take it game by game. There's always spots and angles you can attack that are mispriced.
Good lesson and reminder. Jim, quick clarification. Were you feeling this way about Dallas just based off of what we saw happen to KP like prior to any news update?
No, it's a great point that Sean made. Like, there's the game to game, and then there's the zoomed out, like, what did we think before the series, right? It's also like the balancing act, right, of the game to game versus the getting caught up. It's like before the series, we didn't think this was going to be a Boston sweep. Now we've seen a game one where they were outstanding, but that game one we were all on. We all thought Boston was going to roll that game because that has been such a strong trend throughout history, those home game one big favorites. Now, game two ended at 7. That's basically exactly what the spread thought was going to happen. That's what the market was on. Now we're seeing Dallas, favored, as Sean pointed out, open 1. It's already at 2.5. If KP news goes official, that might even get out to 4. So again, if we trust the market again, it's looking like suddenly, there's a decent chance that we go 2-1. You've got 2 like loaded coin flip games here towards Dallas. There's a chance that this goes 2-2. But again, to Sean's point, even more so, these can flip again. So watch how those games go. If it's that some of these shooters start hitting stuff on the road that we don't like them back in Boston as much, then it's come back on the other side. We still are looking good for Boston -1.5 or Boston for the series as a whole. So again, it's this balancing act of big picture, not getting too caught up in the weeds, but then also being able to react at a game to game as we get more information. So that's the fun of betting, right? That's what we're all trying to do here, is balance those kind of big picture things with the nitty gritty game to game stuff. So, I think there's a lot of ways to approach Dallas. I think this is a really big game script game. I'm going to talk through a couple plays that could be correlated potentially. So I think there's lots of room and ways to bet this out there. But I definitely am going to be on the Dallas side of things, especially if that KP news becomes official.
All right, well, let's get into it. What are you looking at specifically betting for this game, Jim?
Yeah, so there's a couple of players here for the Mavs who really shoot better, a lot better, notably better at home for the Mavs this season. So I'm gonna rattle off some numbers at you here, but Derek Jones Jr., his 3-point percentage at home this season, 39.2%. On the road, almost 10 percentage points lower, 29.4%. Tim Hardaway Jr., 36.5% compared to 34.2%. Dante Exum,
Jim, tell me, who's Tim Hardaway Jr.? I don't know.
We'll get to that in 1 second, actually, Sean. That's funny you say that, because we'll get to that in 1 second. And Dante Exum, who came in and hit a pretty big shot in game 2. He was over 50% at home and sub 50% on the road. So these are all guys who potentially are going to be more confident and better shooters at home. Now, like Sean said, who's THJ? Did we see him? Did missing persons report in game 2? Well, the beauty of some of this is, and I'm going to be looking at Tim Hardaway Jr., like some of these alt props, right? Like to score 10 plus, 15 plus, because he didn't play last game. He got 0 minutes. There's a decent chance he doesn't play in game 3. But the beauty of it is, if he doesn't play, this bet voids. I was talking to Joe Dallaire about this. He was on THJ because he does have that ceiling where if he gets in home game, hits a couple of quick threes, he's going to get minutes. There's also a chance he just doesn't play. He's a defensive liability on the other end of things. He tends to not be the most efficient player. So this guy who's got such a big ceiling and such a low floor, part of the niceness of this bet is that the part of the floor is he just doesn't play. And then your bet voids and you don't have to worry about it. Now, Exum is a guy who's likely to get minutes. So Jason Kidd said a couple things after the game that made me think that we're going to get more Dante Exum minutes. Now, the funky part of this is those two would potentially eat into Derek Jones Jr. minutes. Now, he's one of these guys who's a better shooter at home. So if he comes out and he hits a couple, maybe we don't see these guys. Maybe if he's making his, then it's like, oh, we don't need THJ because Derek Jones Jr. is doing this. So I would go to the extremes with this. That's why I want Tim Hardaway Jr., 15 plus. If he comes out and hits 3 threes, he's going to be playing a lot this game, but he's going to be baked in at, someone who is not getting all those minutes because he literally didn't play in game 2. So go to the extremes with this. You can even get a little funky with it, like an Exum over and a Derek Jones Jr. under, even though we saw that he's better at home. If he misses a couple, then maybe these guys start eating into it. So that, I think those trio of guys are really the ones to watch for. You can do this live too, because say we don't get those Hardaway props. They aren't out there right now, which I was bummed. I wanted to come with something specific to hand out. Not out there yet. Watch if it's live though. If he comes in and hits that first 3, I'm going to be very interested in taking him up to 10, 15, because I think that's going to be, in these finals games when guys are hitting, they're going to stay out on the floor. And this mess of wings that Dallas has, it gives them a little bit of potential to kind of see who's hitting and who's got the confidence to take the shots in general. So you can get really funky with this. You can live bet it. You can same game parlay it. There's a lot of different ways to approach kind of these trio of key wings for Dallas.
Jim with the ultimate buy low, bet the guy that hasn't played. But in all seriousness, I like how you're kind of getting into Jason Kidd's psyche a little bit and, what his rotations might be, because I was personally surprised to see Exum as early as we did in the last game. So you got to kind of expect some of the unexpected here to get some really good value. All right, Jim, before we let you go, you may have heard we are building not just any parlay, but the notorious SGP. We already have one leg down, courtesy of Sean, and that's Mavs in the first quarter. You need to give us the second leg. So what do you got?
So for this one, I'm going back to the well. This was before the series. This was my absolute favorite bet. It's a game. It's one you can do every game. It's one you don't have to rush out to do. It's not going to move crazy amounts. It moved 1 point, but it's not going to move a ton. Fourth quarter under. The first 2 fourth quarters have gone easily under. These have been pretty unsweaty fourth quarter unders. Talked about this before the series even started. The Celtics are, for whatever reason, I think, I kind of laid out my logic then, talking about how, they blow out a lot of teams, and they also have a clutch defense. So there's kind of multiple routes to this, but they are fourth quarter under juggernauts. They're 2-0 in the series so far, like I said, which brings them to 12-4 to the under for these playoffs as a whole. And now 64, 33-1 for the year overall. We go back to last year, they were 66-36 to the under in these fourth quarters. So is it because of the blowouts? Is it because of the clutch defense? I think it's a little bit of both. And I think it's really that we just have a lot of options to this. It's looked awesome for the first 2 games. Why mess with it if it's, why mess with success? Let's try and get a third straight here. See if we can keep it rolling at fourth quarter under 50.5 points.
Sounds good. Well, Jim, thank you for your contribution. We'll see you next time. Thanks for joining the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Check out the odds leaders to win Finals MVP on the Celtics side of things. Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown lead the way at plus 145. Drew Holiday at plus 650. Derek White longer at plus 5,000. Kristaps Porzingis plus 6,000. By the way, if you're wondering, Luka Doncic is at plus 600. Time for picks and roll as we welcome Joe Delera to the party. All right. Who's your Finals MVP right now?
Look, I still think that it's Tatum. I think that's where the betting value is. Maybe if this was a 2-game series, you could pick like a Drew Holiday or a Kristaps Porzingis, but guess what? It's not. We've got a lot more games to play, and those type of performances from both Drew and Kristaps, especially given the fact that he's dealing with whatever this injury is. But there's opportunity still for Tatum. Tatum's leading the series in assists. He's 1 rebound behind Luka Doncic for the series lead in rebounds, and he's still generating the second most points out of all players in the series, obviously second to Luka. The scoring has not really been there, but he's still putting up 17 points a game. It's just the percentages aren't there. We know there's a lot of volume. And if there is an injury to Porzingis, I expect there to be a little bit of an uptick in the usage that Tatum has to kind of take on. And, maybe some of the plays, maybe some of the extra looks go Tatum's way. So I think that there's plenty of opportunity there for Jason Tatum to really thrive and continue to succeed in this series. He hasn't had that monster shooting game just yet, but Tatum's like a streaky shooter. And I know he struggled for really like a lot of the playoffs, but at the same time, he absolutely has that type of ceiling to put up a 35, 40 point game for Boston. So I like that. And I also love the fact that he's still defending through like 1 through 5. He's covering centers. He's playing on guards. There's a lot of opportunity here for Jason Tatum. I still think he's the best player in the Celtics. I think that he is definitely the most important, and I think that he should be able to win most valuable player. These odds are too long for me at this point. Plus 145. I think it's a nice way to get in to back Boston to win this series.
Nice to hear some kind words about Jason Tatum in today's media landscape. But, you know, Sean, I think you could make a case for a couple of other guys, but where do you stand on this?
Yeah, I'm with my guy, JD. Jason Tatum is the answer. The reason we're talking about Drew Holiday even being an option here is because he's getting easy, wide open layups because Jason Tatum is dropping him off the rock right at the rim. I think that's a big reason why Drew Holiday's been playing so well on offense is because of the impact that Jason Tatum has had. 29 drives to the basket in game 2. He averaged just over 9 in the regular season. He has been uber aggressive with the rock in his hands, trying to create. Now, I think it shows how impactful, and I think there is a bit of narrative in this, how much people want him to win the award with him still being the favorite, averaging 17 points on 31.6% from the floor, 28.6% from 3, and he's turning it over almost 5 times a game to start the series. Him being the favorite still shows you how big of an impact he's making. And this is going to be one of those spots, actually kind of what we just saw with Kristaps. People were telling me that we should have bet Kristaps at plus, he got to like plus 7-1. And then look at where he is now. This could be a case where Tatum puts together 2 good games and they split in Dallas, and he could be minus 400 to win that MVP in a flash. So I think the only way to go here is Jason Tatum. If he could just play okay putting the ball in the basket, he'll be far and away the favorite here for this award.
Absolutely. Well, I am going to have some more thoughts on Tatum later in the show, but for now, Joe, why don't we get your prop pick for game 3?
So one of the angles that I want to tackle is I want to go to Luka Doncic over 8.5 first quarter points. There were a lot of things that I liked from him in late in the game 2 option, like in the game 2 game plan. There were a lot of good adjustments that I thought happened late in the fourth quarter for Dallas, some of which were they were running a little bit more Spain pick and roll. They had some opportunities for double drag, and I think that they found success there, but they weren't able to continue it throughout the end of the game, in large part because that's when Boston started to make a bunch of threes. Look, if Porzingis is out, we know that Al Horford is not going to play the entire first quarter. So if there's no KP, or if he's limited, or if he's a little bit banged up, that means that we're going to see Cornette or Tillman minutes, and they're just absolute barbecue chicken for Luka Doncic. He's going to crush them, as they generally have to play drop. They're not able to switch at the same rate. And I think that that's a good opportunity there as well. Plus, one of the other things, it came out just a little bit earlier today, but McMahon reported that Luka got a pain-killing shot pregame in game 2. And he's expected to get that again in game 3. So I think that it's an opportunity for a fresh start there for him. And when Luka is coming off of a loss this postseason, he's averaging 12.8 first quarter points. He's exceeded this mark in 4 of the 6 games, and both of the misses are only at 8 points. So I expect him to come locked in, focused, and fully medicated.
Yeah, for sure. And, you know, I see Sean nodding because obviously this goes hand in hand with Sean's earlier pick. He took Dallas in the first quarter, which is the first leg of the notorious SGP. Joe, it's up to you now to give us another leg for the parlay. So what do you have for that?
So I'm looking at Drew Holiday over 10.5 rebounds plus assists. Part of why I like this is that he's seen a pretty significant uptick off of his regular season minutes. He played about 30 minutes a game in the regular season, and he's averaging about 38 minutes per game during the finals. And in his last 10 playoff games, he's averaging 11.5 rebounds plus assists, but he's exceeded this line in 8 of 10 games. But probably most importantly, he's gotten 13 and 14 in both games during the finals. Additionally, I really like here that he's got so much opportunity, and a lot of it's through scheme. He's averaging 9.5 rebounds per game on the series on 16.5 chances, and he's averaging 4 assists per game on 9.5 potential assists per game. So a lot of this is schematic. They have him, sitting in the dunker spot, being able to grab a bunch of these offensive boards. They also have him, cutting in, helping on these broken plays, and really helping to facilitate, but also to grab some of these rebounds and give extra opportunities. He's averaging 3 offensive rebounds per game. So even though his rebound distance is a little bit far, which kind of makes you think it's a little bit wonky, at the same time, those offensive boards are planned. Telling him to crash the boards is a planned effort. And I like the fact that we're going to be able to kind of encapsulate both of that and both of the ceiling in both the rebounds and the assists. And I like him to go over the 10.5 rebounds plus assists in game 3.
Sean, what's not to love about Drew Holiday? I mean, he's just so smart. He does everything.
Yeah, no, I call him Drew Holiday. That's my guy, man. He's the type of player you want on your team, does everything he's supposed to, has a great attitude, and yeah, he's just a guy you want on the floor. I completely misread this rebounding market for Drew Holiday. Going into the series, one of my plays was Drew Holiday under 5.2 rebounds for the series. And as Valera just laid out, he's been crashing the boards almost at perfect timing, because he has been amongst the trees in a lot of these, and he's coming down with offensive rebounds. He's been sensational on the glass, and then we talk about creation. He could do that too, especially depending. They might need some additional creation now with Kristaps being out or injured or hobbled or whatever that ends up netting out to be. So yeah, Drew Holiday is impactful, and we know he's going to play 37, 38 minutes. That's the standard for Drew Holiday. He doesn't get in foul trouble. You don't have to worry about stupid fouls and him potentially removing himself from the game. So I like this look from JD.
For sure. He's just one of those players you can trust. He's a stabilizer. He's experienced. All right, guys, thank you so much for your picks, for your insights. It's been so fun hanging with you on the show.
Thanks, Maria.
Thanks, Maria.
Baby.
Quickly, let's recap the notorious SGP that we've built throughout this show. So once again, Sean likes the Mavs in the first quarter. We also have a fourth quarter under 50.5, courtesy of Jim Turvey. And you just heard Joe Delera talk about Drew Holiday, his over 10.5 rebounds plus assists. Time for me to get in one final parting shot at the buzzer. And I just want to say this. Jason Tatum needs to find more joy in playing basketball. I know that sounds super simple, but look, the Celtics have played so well this postseason, yet Tatum has been criticized for just not being a dominant enough star. It is a narrative that's followed him around for a couple seasons now, and you can see it weighing on him. He was visibly frustrated in game 2 at times, was forcing bad shots, but he just needs to find more joy. I mean, he's worked his whole life to become an NBA champion. He's on the brink of doing so, and he should feel really good about what he's contributing because he is making an impact. You know, when I used to cover Gino Auriemma in UConn, one thing he would talk about was players who were maybe like experiencing a shooting slump, and he would tell them, you need to find other ways to impact the game besides scoring. Well, Tatum is doing that, and then some. Shooting percentages, not where he'd like them to be, but his presence is drawing the defense. It's opening things up for his teammates, and he's both feeding them and cleaning up the glass at an elite level. I thought it was so important and just smart of Drew Holiday to shout out Tatum in the post-game interview. I went through the play-by-play. 6 of Drew's 11 made field goals were assisted by Tatum. So hopefully, Jason Tatum, you are feeling good about that, and you can savor the rest of this series because you deserve it. And that's all for Nothing But Bet. Thanks so much for hanging with us throughout the show, and enjoy the finals.